We're joined now by Congressman Kevin Brady of Texas. Congressman Brady's been a lead on one of our briefs. We've now filed at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, but we want to start first, Congressman Brady. I appreciate you joining us on Sekulow. With this congressional move, we don't see it often these days where you've got this kind of bipartisan move. 413-9 was the vote in the House, 100-0 in the Senate, and it was for Congress to suspend all normal trade relations with Russia and ban importation of its oil and gas indefinitely. So, Congressman, I want to ask you this first. You got this bipartisan support. Is there any question about whether President Biden will actually sign this into law?
Yeah, so, Jay, I think he will sign into the law, but I think you make an important part here. Look, so the good news is with these two bills, we've targeted 100% of what Russia sells into the U.S. Oil and energy is about 60%. The special trade relationship that we revoked was the rest of it. So I think this is going to do some damage. Certainly we're not going to be contributing to funding that war. I think that's important. But you need to know Republicans and Democrats in the House and Senate came together more than 6 weeks together on this. President Biden fought this tooth and nail, both banning Russian energy purchases as well as lifting that special trade status. Only when he saw that we had more than 400 votes did he reverse course and sign an executive order on oil and now supporting the trade status revocation. So, yes, he's going to sign it. But my frustration, I think, in much of us with the war is, how reluctant he's been to engage in a meaningful way to support Ukraine.
I was listening last night to some commentary, and I was looking at some articles that have been posted on this, Congressman. And the thing that I think hit me the most here is not only the reluctancy of the administration to eventually get to the point where, in your case, you've got really wide bipartisan support for both pieces of legislation, but the indecision, the critical indecision that's taking place in the situation with Russia and Ukraine. And I'm trying for the life of me to figure out what is so difficult for them to do here. They've got all these supposed, bureaucratic experts. You got the State Department, and yet they're acting as if they have no idea how to proceed forward on this.
No, and Jay, I think it's because they don't. They have a built-in bias here that the best thing that can happen here is a negotiated surrender, that it's inevitable, and their job is to support Ukraine, but they know the outcome. Well, but the rest of the world has changed their belief here. The rest of the world is all in for a Ukrainian victory here, and this White House and State Department, as you know, the diplomats just aren't buying this. And so that's why I think not only are the actions slow and modest, but the delivery of these weapons and what this funding is actually buying, we see the announcements every week, but we're not seeing the weaponry on the ground in Ukraine. And I know it is a frustration for President Zelensky, but I think it is, frankly, for both parties in Congress.
Congressman Brady, this idea, too, is that I think that the American people at this point, we want to do everything possible to end the conflict. It's whatever we can do to influence to an end to this conflict sooner rather than later. But it is a question because we see, I want to go to one of our brief as well. We saw the Biden administration a year ago tell the American people, we're going to provide you this COVID relief, but by the way, you can't cut taxes. You can't cut anything that would cut revenue. And now a year later, we're looking at these gas prices. So we're talking about oil and gas already. You're a lead on our brief, and we're now at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. We won this at the district court, but the Biden administration's still fighting. And we were talking about it just in the first segment of our broadcast, the idea that there's states, like your state, I know, and Texas is looking at doing this, where we are, is looking at providing relief through taking some of those taxes off gas so that, again, there's some relief from the inflation we've seen. And yet this would prevent that. And the Biden administration's still in court fighting this issue.
Yeah, it is. One, thanks for your leadership on this in so many issues, really important to Texans and conservatives. So thank you, first and foremost. But secondly, look, this is the administration that has had it wrong from the get-go, and I think that nearly $2 trillion March COVID stimulus, as they sold it, but had very little to do with COVID. And the only thing it stimulated was raging inflation for the past year, and the worst in 40 years, is that, frankly, they don't know how to lead this country. They have no policies that actually strengthen us, that strengthen families or the economy in any meaningful way. And I think every step they've made, and thankfully you've been helping challenge this or leading the challenge on this, we've had to step forward to try to course correct everything for them.
Congressman, I want to follow up on that, and it ties also into the legislation that you led with ending the Importation of Russian Oil Act and the suspending the normal trade relations with Russia and Belarus. I'm looking at the situation now, and this is what I'm wondering. And we go back to the situation with Russia and Ukraine. What's the end game here? I mean, what's the exit? What's the off ramp? How does this matter get resolved so that we don't continue to have, which I'm calling, a war in Eastern Europe?
Yeah. So I think the answer is, when Ukraine is in a position of strength in negotiations, I think there is a settlement that still defends their sovereignty and is a settlement that still retains their independence. But that only happens, Jay, if they are prevailing on the field of battle, which is why every country in the free world ought to be figuring out a way to deliver the weaponry they need. Again, no one's looking to trigger a third world war. I know no one in Congress who has that interest, but the way this is settled in a freedom-loving way is for us to be helping Ukraine win on the field of battle.
Congressman, based on what you know, and I'm obviously not asking you to violate any confidences or security issues, can Ukraine repel Russia and at least keep a significant portion of their country?
Yes, absolutely. And you've seen this with very little help from the outside world. You've seen remarkable wins there, and they forced Russia to change their entire outlook and maybe their entire endgame here in Ukraine. And they're doing that on a wing and a prayer. Just imagine the strength they have if we'll actually deliver the weaponry and the help that they deserve, the intelligence as well to help them here.
So with the ending importation of the Russian Oil Act, I want our audience to understand exactly what does this do?
Yeah, so it immediately ends purchases of Russian oil and all forms of energy. Again, that's about 60% of what they sell in the United States. It's about 8% of what we buy on the energy front. So you've got to replace that with, our belief, American-made energy. But the administration is looking to Canada, Venezuela, to Iran to try to replace that. The truth of the matter is we are far less energy independent now under President Biden than we were under President Trump. And so, we sort of got ourselves into this pickle because of horrible policies from the White House. So, it's going to help stop any funding there. But secondly, I think, revoking the special trade relations focuses on the other things Russia sells to us. And it is chemicals like in fertilizer, it's wood products, it is food, obviously, and foodstuffs, areas like that. And so I think we're going to be able to do some more economic damage to them.
And Congressman Brady, the idea, too, I think Americans can be proud of what Congress has done here by leading the world. I mean, the rest of the world not ready to take this action, not willing to take this action. Our European allies not willing to do this. They say they're working towards it, but they would cripple their economies right now. But the United States, when they're watching these horrible images and they want to say, like, what can we do? This is a major action by preventing at least some of that money from going to that Russian war machine.
It is. And I think that the important thing is that Congress moved immediately after President Zelensky spoke to us. And it was I've been in Congress 26 years, heard a lot of remarks to Congress. This, I think, was one of the most moving, among the most moving that we've seen. And Republicans and Democrats immediately went to work. That weekend, we negotiated these two sanctions on Russia, again, with the White House pushing back every step of the way. But you wonder if leadership like a President Zelensky can make a difference. I can tell you on these two bills, it absolutely motivated and inspired us.
Thank you, Congressman. We really appreciate your leadership on this. Thanks for working with us on that brief to the 11th Circuit. We look forward to having you back on.
Thank you, sir. Take care, Jay.
Yep, very good.
Congressman Kevin Brady of Texas. Great to have him on the broadcast again. He's the lead sponsor, put together the members of Congress on our brief, 64 total. That includes 11 U.S. senators, 53 members of Congress.